It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Rachel Strenger, and your maiden name was
Ringer,
and we're here in your beautiful home in Yerushalayim. And Rachel, you have the most incredible story, and your mother was one of the most amazing heroes in Jewish history, really.
Yes, I can say so. So I speak every year on Yom HaShoah in several places. And this is one of the things that I always have time to do, because we don't know how long we still will speak and tell. And you interviewed me already once, but it was more about the time in the war. And after that you interviewed Benjamin Schoenfeld, and I saw it, so I remember very well this story. So I don't want to repeat so much about my mother in the war. I just can say this: we stayed alone. We had a Paraguayan passports, so my father was taken to a work camp. They called it Schutzhaft. Schutzhaft means that they protect him from the Americans and the Allies and so on. It was actually a work camp, not very pleasant, but thanks God he survived and he came healthy home.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
When were you born and where were you born?
I was born in Antwerp in 12th of Kislev and 15th of November 1937, at the end of 37. I was a little girl, but I remember even when we were fled to Dunkirk, that and you know, all the people tried to get to England, and there was the day when the Nazis came in. I remember even that, and I must be very young, because my mother was pregnant with my late brother Benny Zechrono Livrocha. Passed away very young. He was killed in a car accident when he was 39, sorry. And so I must be very, very young, because we were 3 years older than he was, 3.5 years. So I have very memories from very far, but as we are not going to make this too long, I'm going to concentrate more on what I have not yet told you, because we had to interview my sister and me in her house. And so now I'm going to tell more about the activities of my mother. So finally my mother stayed alone with us. That means my sister and me, we were hidden twice. Once we were hidden at a very, very nice and good family Juchtmans, who took us, but I told her story already, so I'm not going to repeat it. We stayed there for a while, and then we were brought to another place in Koksit. There was a lady, Mademoiselle Sorel, who is also in Yad Vashem now, as one of people that saved more than 60 Jewish children, and we were there for quite a while, and then we came back. When we came back, my father was already not at home. It means he was taken in the time that we were not there. And my mother was pregnant with my youngest brother, Eli, that you also interviewed, and this little boy who could not sit and not stand until he was 2, it became one of a very, very important people of the Consistoire in Belgium. Consistoire is this organization that is between the Jewish communities and the government. So he did a good job, and he continues to do a good job. Thanks God, he's my baby brother. Okay, so my mother stayed with us alone, and she gave birth to Eli when my father was away. We were not, Jews were not allowed to go in a hospital, so she was just worried how would she give birth to. We didn't have a telephone anymore, and the radio was taken away, and so on. So to make a long story short, because I told it already, she found a lady who was a nurse. We called her Zuster. Zuster means sister. And she stayed with us till the end of the war. And she got the doctor when it was on time, because she couldn't call him anymore. And also Jews were not allowed to go out before 7 in the morning and after 7 in the evening. And thanks God he was born and recovered and became a very famous and absolute outstanding person. Now, my mother was alone with us. We had a very special education. We had programs every day, as I taught already, so I don't want to repeat it. But what is very important, and it's going also to be a part of my message. My mother was alone with us. We didn't have any books anymore, because the Nazis took everything out of our house that was belongings of my grandparents that were taken, because they didn't have this passport, and I don't know until now why. I was there in the room, and of course they took away also whatever they found in the house, and without any books. At the end of the war, maybe my siblings a little bit less, but I don't know what they remember. I knew all the stories, not of the Torah, but of the Tanakh, including till the end the stories of Eliyahu Navi and so on. Actually, the first thing what my mother did after the war, she engaged a gentleman, Mr. Salomon, who was a survivor, I don't know even from where he came, and he taught us to read. So, at the end of the war, I knew all the tefillas that the child must know, Birkat Hamazon, Shema, or the broches. I think I didn't know less than a child today knows after the first class, and she did it all. But not only that, at the end of the war, she cracked down. The day of when the Aliyah's camp came, she lay on a bed. She had high fever. She was covered by she had wounds. But she knew exactly that she cannot be sick, because she was alone with 4 children. And so she got up very early. And then started actually the reconstruction of Antwerp. And there was amazing. I don't know how she did. She was very sick. And first of all, American and English soldiers came. They opened a shul. We went to shul. By the way, I want to say they had a very traumatic experience there. It was the first, I don't remember, it was Pesach, I guess it was Pesach. We went to the Eisenman Shul. The Eisenman Shul in the Ostenstraat was, I think, the first shul that opened. And then came Maskir. Okay, of course, she said, we have to go out. But then was what I saw there. My mother actually took us and ran away. People were laying on the floor, screaming and crying and shouting. Were all people that saw their parents, their children, their sibling killed before their eyes. It was a terrible experience, this Yizkor, this first Yizkor. So she grabbed us and we ran away of this shul, but I will never forget it. Okay, we can understand it. But then shuls opened, and even not religious soldiers came to shul just to meet people. Now, my mother invited them home, especially one of them, David Stein, we call him Dudu, who was very much involved with my mother together in reconstruction the Jewish city, because there was nothing. People started to come out from their cellars, from their attics where they were hidden. We were actually the only official family official that were in Antwerp, one blonde lady with 4 little blonde children. And the people came out, and when they realized that they were alone in the world, they just died. They held themselves all this time with the hope that they would find somebody, and they didn't. So my mother had also to make taharas, and I remember that with the ladies that came, I don't know from where, and they were sewing tachrichim in the evening in our house. But I would now say that time for me, this after the bombing, which was, I think I was more scared from the bombs than from what was in the war, because it was really very frightening. And I want to speak about family Schoenfeld. This family Schoenfeld survived. The child was given, as you know, in the interview that you made, and he came back. I saw this child, I think never in my life I saw something so tiny and so thin. He was really a little nothing. And actually, as he said himself, and I was there when what he said, there came an angel, Mrs. Ringer, and saved him, but it was very traumatic. He was there with his mother. His mother brought him to my mother, saying he doesn't want to eat. So my mother decided she's going to force him to eat. Now, she was putting it in the mouth, and it came out, or from his mouth or from the other side. And she continued, and she continued. He was crying, I was crying, his mother was sobbing. It was terrible, you couldn't look at it. And she continued, and she continued, and she continued. And at the end, he swallowed something, and it stayed in his body. And slowly, slowly, this little nothing became a boy. I was also involved before his bar mitzvah. I was helping him with Chumash Rashi for Shvois, for his bar mitzvah parsha, but it was much later. And then I remember the night when the bombs came, and all the windows in our whole house cracked down. In the whole street there were half houses. And then I remember Mr. Schoenfeld, he was in a I would say a morning gown, or how you call this, and he came with this little boy fleeing from his own house, and he came in his house, and his wife came afterwards. And actually we were sitting there were already so many people in our house, because who didn't know where to go just came to us. And there were, on the floor there were mattresses, I don't know from where they brought him. I remember there was one elderly gentleman who came to us if he can come to our house. He was later a teacher in school. And then my mother asked him, from where do you have my address? They said, listen, I went to the committee, and they say, there's a Meshugana there, she takes everybody, go there. So he was also there. So the house was full of people. Actually for us, or for me at least, we liked it very much, because all this time we were all by ourselves. The children that I was playing with on the street were not Jewish. To say Tzalash, as we say in Hebrew, to the people in our street, everybody knew that we were Jewish, and nobody denounced us. But my mother was going with the star, and I didn't have a star. And to look a little flashback, I remember I had a friend, Miriam Friedman. She was the daughter of the Menahel of the Yesod Torah of the school where I went, and was very jealous of her because she was already so big. She was 7, and she had this beautiful yellow thing on her clothes, and I thought it really looks good, and I was very jealous because I'm too small and I couldn't have it yet. I understand. Miriam never came back. I never saw her again, not her, not father, not the whole family.
So can I just ask, Rachel, I know because you had the passports, the Paraguayan passports, So your mother went with the star,
Yes.
and she even went to the German officials.
Yes,
and
yes. Listen,
it's a miracle.
I am a living miracle. We are all. Everybody is here. We are. I shouldn't be here. I mean, there's also people with, there was a lady in the street, and she was really South American. I mean, her husband really was South American, didn't have false passports that we had. And he was killed in Buchenwald. And she stayed alone. I remember Frau Steinhauer. We very much admired her because she was always looking so nice and pretty. So, yes. And of course, when you know that you're a survivor, then you know that you cannot live, just let go, but you have a message to say, and I will say it at the end. So my mother started inviting all these soldiers, and they came. And we had so beautiful Suda Shlishit. They came, there was not a lot on the table, I think nearly nothing, but the singing was so beautiful. And we sat together, and I had such a wonderful feeling that I'm surrounded by Jews, as small as I was. It was such a good feeling. I was so touched about it. And many people passed through our house and were there, and they came and they went later, and my mother helped everybody. One of the things, after the war, there was a man called Mr. Timberg. They said that he was hidden some part, and he was a big Talmid Chacham. And they said that the whole war he sat in his hidden place, where I don't remember even, it was not in Antwerp. And he studied and he davened all around. People said that in his merit, maybe from Antwerp something remained, because most of the people were. Now he came back with a very quite sick son. And now my mother, so 4 children, yeah, a house full of people. Of course, no freezer, no fridge. There was a stove, and then later we had also a gas stove. Of course, no frozen food, nothing. She decided that she would prepare every day a meal for him, a warm meal, and bring it to him. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And then one of the also very amazing things that I remember, that I know, is all the European countries had very bad conscience, because they know exactly that they could have avoided a lot, and they didn't. So Belgium let everybody in. Everybody who escaped from wherever they came to Antwerp. But they didn't give them the permission to work. So these people couldn't survive. So they were somewhere in attics and, I don't know, little apartments, starving. And so one of the things my mother did, as sick as she was, as she went to see all these people, and she knew exactly where the people were, with how many people in the house. And then the way in Antwerp people were living is that the ladies, you had the person selling milk and cheese and so on, and then the butcher, and then where you were taking your veggies. They were mostly Jewish shops, because the people came and opened shops. So she went to the ladies, where usually they were paying once a week, and she'd say, when you pay, could you give 10 or 20 francs more, and only the butcher or the shopman, and my mother knew to whom they were sending, according as much children that they have, food every week. And she put this alone, she arranged all this thing without any help. She never worked in an office. She didn't know to write on she didn't know to do that, but she did it. Then later there were more and more people, and these 10 and 20 francs were not enough anymore. So she started when finally people started to make simchas. She went to the people that makes the simchas if they can give something for this organization. The name was Matan Beseder. And they did. And everybody received a handwritten thanks letter from my mother. So she was absolutely amazing, not feeling well, having 4 children at home. Family Schoenfeld, thanks God, as far as I understood, they got very financially, they could get up very well because Mr. Schoenfeld was already in diamonds before the war, so he knew what to do. But I remember them as very kind and very friendly people that were often in our house. There were the soldiers, there were these other people that came. Many of them, of course, went away afterwards because also they couldn't stay. The soldiers, of course, went away because sometime, at a certain moment, they went home. And there were, but the one that we stayed the most in contact was really Dudu, David Stein, and he, in all sense, he had very good connections to America, and he could gather money because all these things had also to be financed. I mean, we had nothing, or a little less than nothing. And money came, but it had to be organized and so on, until very officially it was done. Also the father of Jenny Waval, Alea Shalom, that just passed away. I didn't know that. I missed the Shiva, otherwise I would have gone. And was also involved in this, in all this putting up Antwerp again. Very quickly, first of all, my mother sent us, my sister and me, in a not Jewish school, a private school of 2 ladies. That, but then came the bombs and they stopped the school. So I wasn't there very long. And then the Jewish school started, the Yesod Torah. From the Tarkamoni, I don't know because I've never been there, but I suppose that also the Tarkamoni came. And it started with, I think, 3 children. And then there were 4, and then 5, and then 8, and then 10. From the girl departments, what was it, the boys, I didn't know. And my aunt, who was hidden for all these years, at Mademoiselle Sorel, where I was hidden, where she was in the cellar washing laundry, but saved her life. She was a teacher, and so I knew already to read. I don't remember if my sister knew to read, yes or no. But I remember that we were there, and then she taught 3 or 4 letters. She said, Rachel, you sit there with 2 children, and you repeat, and Anneke, you sit there and you do that. It was a chaos. And every day you never knew who was coming to school. And then there came also children that were already 10, 12, 14, and they, of course, you can't put a child of 14 years in the first class because he can't read Hebrew. So the classes were changing every day. Never whether you're in the first or second or third degrees. But at the end, you know what? It became a fantastic school. At the end, when I left Antwerp, there were more than 1,000 children there. And I finished school there, and I make seminary there. So that's where I had my formal education, of course. What you learn out of school is sometimes more important. And I was a teacher myself. First I went, because I was very young when I finished school, because I skipped quite classes. And so I went first a half a year to Switzerland in a family of us, family Sternbuch, who was a very famous family. I'm sure that you know that. Who saved
was this Rachel Strenger?
It was actually a cousin. Because a cousin or sister-in-law, it was at Familie Sternbuch, and the lady was a Pappenheim, and she was actually a cousin of my mother. And they lived in St. Gallen. This other, the famous Rachel Strenger, lived in Montreux and did fabulous work. And they were in St. Gallen, so I was there half a year to be what we call Hauslehrer. I was a teacher for all the children, and now the oldest girl, Muki, was a half year younger than me, so you can imagine was not very simple to handle, not for her, not for me. And then my mother got very sick, and I was called back to Antwerp, and then I was teacher in Antwerp until I got married.
And Rachel, can I ask, during this time, your father was taken away.
Yeah.
And did you know that he was still alive? Or?
Yes, because my mother and he were corresponding. There's also a very famous letter. Of course, that everything had to pass through the censor, but this I told already in the other interviews. I don't want to repeat it. But actually, what was very important was that after the war, people tried to get, there were many children hidden in convents, but also in Christian families. These children didn't remember their parents anymore, and they didn't remember that they were Jewish. And now came some aunt, something times parents, or in our case a grandfather, because his son and daughter-in-law passed away, and he knew that he had two grandchildren in a family, and he got them out. And everybody who could took some children in his house. And my mother also wanted to take two of those children. And so Dudestein wrote a very famous letter to my father in a Hebrew that you don't see now anymore. Are you interested that I read this letter?
Very much.
So this was the letter. Look at his scripture, the way he wrote. Fantastic. By the way, this Dudestein wrote every day a letter home, as long as he was in the war, in Yiddish to his family. Every day. And the whole war he didn't touch something treif. He never did. So you can see here the letter, and it is UNRWA Center. Now, UNRWA, we don't like it so much anymore, right? You see that it's here, they say that it passed the
censor.
The censor, yes. So it was Beit Parshat Emor Tafshin לכבוד ידידי רב שלמה נרו יאיר. Of course he never saw him. עוד לא קיבלנו תשובה מכבודו, אבל השעה ואשתו דוחקות שאכתוב ואבשר שהכל הולך כשורה ואין מה לדאוג על מצב בריאות משפחתו, which was a lie because my mother was very sick, או על מקור פרנסתם. האישה וילדיה ואחותה כולם ברוך השם בריאים ועליזים. עליזים was true.
Rachel, can you translate it for the listeners?
You prefer me to translate it immediately?
But to read it and to translate it.
You want me to read it or to immediately translate it?
No, afterwards.
Okay, so I will. Okay. Okay. גם העניים, החיילים, הלמדנים, החרדים, הצדיקים, שכולם בני ביתה של מרת רינגר, מתענגים שם בתכלית העונג, ועוזרים לה בכל כוחם בעבודתה הקדושה, לטובת הכלל והיחידים והאומללים. אם שוב דברים לאיתנם, רחבה מאוד העבודה קשה והמלאכה מרובה. דאגתון היותר חשובה לעת עתה היא פדיון הבית אלפים תינוקות שנשבו בידי הנוצרים, יהדותם משכחת להם מיום ליום, ואין עוד מקום לשימם ולפרנסם. עד אשר יאפשר הפדיון, אם בכלל יאפשר הפדיון בכלל. משתדלים אנו שכל משפחה תיקח לה ילדים אחדים ותקדלם, you see what Hebrew, עד בו אביהם או העלייה לארץ, וכיוון שמרת רינגר הרי היא קריינר דגרתה בעניין ההוא, קיבלה עליה לקחת 2 ילדים לביתה, מובן שהיא רוצה בכל נפשה לדעת דעת בעלה על עניין חשוב זה, אבל הסנה בוער והסנה הוא קל, ומי יאמר אם עוד תהיה סנה אם נחכה. בכל יום שבים פליטים חדשים לעיר, ובכיליון עיניים מחכה כל אחד לקרוביו ולבני משפחתו. זה עכשיו, what I told you before, שב הנה רב שמואל טימברג עם בנו החלוש, וגם להם קיבלה על עצמה האשת חיל לבשל תבשיל בכל יום ולהביאו אצלם. משתומם אני הרבה פעמים, נשאלת איך יכולה בריאה אחת לעשות כל כך, והיא רק צוחקת ואומרת שהעבודה מבריאה. מקיימת היא מצוות וקראת לשבת עונג לפנים משורת הדין, בהזמנתה לסעודה שלישית את כל קבוצת הצעירים החרדים, זמרתם המתלהבת עולה עד לרקיע, אבל הנוחים שדרים בקומה התחתונה, because in the time of the war the Nazis put another family in our house because we were not allowed to have this house for ourselves. אינם שומעים כלום, כנראה עוד לא העתיקו את מושבם, אף שביקשה מהם את זה גברת רינגר. בברכת שלום וברכה, הנני ידידך דוד. So, בגדול, David Stein says that he wants to tell about us, our family, that we are well and we are happy and we don't miss anything and everything is fine, but there is a big issue of taking out the children, as I told before, and my mother also wanted to take 2 children, and what she did at the end, the name was Jean and the other was Pierre. This I understand more than then I don't know. There's even a photo of one of them there, not both of them, and that she asked her husband if he is ready to do so, and then he tells about how our house was open and everybody came and we make a beautiful Shabbos, and which really were the most beautiful Shabbatot that I remember in my life. So now here, this is the way that we looked at the end of the war. Can you see it?
It's a magnificent picture.
Yeah. Okay. And here is also, here I have some others. The quality is very bad because we also make it, this was, of course you cannot see it. You see here, that's my mother with the 4 of us. We can't see Eli. And what you don't realize that here around everything, you see here no windows. In all the houses. They were all broken.
It was from the bombing?
Yeah, it was from the bombing, yes.
Rachel, can I just ask you, because I think it's so important to say it again, you have the most amazing miracle with Eli, yes. when he couldn't stand up because he was
I will tell you the story immediately, but as I have this here, look here you have Dudu Stein, the soldier, and our family, and he has Eli on his shoulders. Okay?
So special.
And this is my auntie who came back right after the war, and with the 4 of us. Here you can see, yes, they're all of us. This is a better picture. This was sent in order to declare that my father was a prisoner and so on. You see, is my mother with Eli, and my sister and me, and Benny.
And what date is this picture? Because you've got the...
That's a good... April 29 April 1944.
So it's still while we had the occupation with it.
No, it was the end already, I think.
It has the German...
Yeah, no, it was still, yes. It was on the border, yes. And here, I told you that my mother took so many people in. One of these were a gentleman called Rav Avrom. Don't ask me his family name. He was a big Talmid Chochem, and he was a very special man. But when he came to us, he got sick. And my mother had to take care of him, even to wash him and to dress him. This is Rav Avrom when he still was fine with Dudu, with David Stein, this wonderful soldier. So about Eli, right? Eli was born, and he was very tiny, and he was always hungry because my mother had to feed him, and but with the food that we had, it was very difficult to feed him. So she was preparing herself. Of course, I will never know from. It's econs or something like that. It's very bitter. It looks like she had to drink a lot in order to have something to feed him. She was drinking about more than 10 liters of that a day because there was nothing other. So he was always hungry, he's always crying, and actually, as she said, that the angel brought him. So after a few days, my brother said we could maybe return him to the angels because he's always crying. And actually he couldn't sit, he couldn't stand. And after the war, when the bombing was, it was a day, I was downstairs in the kitchen with my mother, and his bed was right next to the window. And then came this horrible bomb, the gasometer that was far away from us flew up, and the windows were cracking. Eli, what do? We flew up the stairs, and Eli was standing in his bed, first time in his life. All the bed was full of glass, and he was holding himself like, look at me. Was not to believe. He couldn't sit by this time. And when he came there, he stood in the bed for the first time of his life, all bed full of glass, and he was standing in the
middle. It's a miracle.
Yes.
Absolute miracle.
Yes, the many, many miracles. Here is another picture that I found with these 4 young men were actually being in our house the whole time, also survivors. And Ina was also a lady that survives, and this is a picture, that's the way we looked. We see everybody smiling and very, very happy. Here is another picture. There was an Israeli soldier who was serving in the British Army. And here we are. And this boy is or Jean or Pierre, I don't remember, one of the 2 boys that my mother took in the house from this. Afterward they made Aliyah and they went to live in a kibbutz, and we had not so much connection anymore.
But it wasn't a relative?
No, not at all. But the grandfather came to my mother and said, look, my children died, my son and my grand. I know that they are there. They don't know me, of course they don't remember me, and they don't want to go away because that's their parents. And it was really very difficult for the children and also for the people that took care of them. they adopted them, so to say. So it was not easy, in no way. Not for them, and also was quite difficult. Some very difficult points with them also when they came to us. They didn't know nothing about Judaism, and they were Christian.
They were brought up as Christians.
Of course. They didn't know anything. They were kneeling every morning and evening and praying to Jesus. That's what they learned. So it was quite difficult. Not very simple. Not very simple.
That your mother took them in and she gave them a home.
Yes.
And she gave them a life.
Yes. And then they didn't stay very long with us, because then lately, the grandparents made Aliyah. But there were many people staying in our house. We lost contact with, all the people that went away, and everybody was concerned and it was good. You must make a living, and build a family and build a parnassa. But I remember it as a very happy time in my life. Afterwards, my father came, of course. It was impossible that all these people stayed with us. So slowly, they went away, and my father...
And Rachel, how was the meeting with your father, when you saw your father?
Strange. I had something in my mind, and he was different. We were then in a camp, in an Aguda camp, and out of Antwerp. That means the two girls, not the two boys, stayed home. They were too small, and was with my aunt. And then my father came, and he was different as I remembered him, and I didn't very much know how to handle that. And the worst of all was that it seemed afterwards that that the water there was not clean, and all of us, we received typhus and paratyphus. So we came home and we were immediately sick, my sister and me. Now, we had paratyphus, but it's bad enough. Believe me, it's a terrible disease. And we were separated. That meant that the upper floor was for my aunt and my sister and me, and my mother was downstairs with my father and the two boys, and she was coming only up once a day, and she couldn't touch us, and she had a special soap to disinfect herself, and we had also two sherutim in the house, so we were using the ones and the other there. So until I really could have contact with my father took time, because I was sick, he was not with us. And then it took some time, I must say, to get used, because until then we had our mother completely for us. Now she has a husband, and it took time. It took time until we really could have a good connection. But it came with the years, and then my father and mother were both very much involved in reconstruction of the community and everything, and but it always became better and better, because we also in the beginning you didn't know how to handle it, that there was a man in the house. We were not used to that. And thanks God, everything came back. It took years, but it came back very well. And then later, of course, the boy grew up. Things were different, of course. My father had to go to work to reconcile. And actually, that he could start to work was also thanks to our cleaning lady. Madame Maria was really a tzaddiket, and we gave away all kinds of things before the occupation. Part of that we never got back. But she hid diamonds under the cage of her rabbits. And she said it to her, there they are. The day when the aliens came, she immediately came and brought all the diamonds back. So when my father came, and he had something that he could start to work again. And that's one of the people that I think I never thanked enough.
Because it's very rare. Most people never return the goods.
No, right. And everything, she brought it. And also when my mother stayed without money, which we told in the last interview, she went to the people there around, and she was selling our stuff that was very precious, but for very little money, but we did need to have food. And yes, this certainly, I must say, today is one of Tzadikot Ha'olam. We never declared it, but today I must say, Madame Maria, you were great, you were Tzadeket, you were Chazidat Umot Ha'olam. You were very loyal to the family, very loyal to the family. She continued to come even during the war, and what she did after, we should never forget it, because this is very important, even if she cannot hear us now, but we have to say thank you. So this is a part of all what my mother did, as I explained you. Then the Aguda started, and my mother was very talented. She knew how do you say, forgot in English, how do you say charuzim? She could write very well, like poetry. And there were some theater pieces that were written in German, and she translated it to Yiddish, and we performed this in the Agudat Israel, and she was the one that prepared everything. She took care of the costumes, she was the metteur en scène, she did everything. As she did with us in the war, she was very creative, and from nothing she made a lot. So I, for instance, never remember that we were hungry, because she was so talented about what we had. It was mostly legumes that we hated, but she tried always to make something good for it. And there was always food on the table, and it was always nice presented, and the Shabbatot were great. And of course, later when my father came home, it changed a lot also for different, very different. And we always had guests. We didn't have family, because later my aunt, the only aunt that came back, it was a sister of my mother, she married to France, to Lyon. So we had one cousin in Antwerp, that was Shimon Pappenheim, and he married also afterwards, and we were in touch with his family, and otherwise we didn't have any family.
And from your father's side, his family?
No, he was a unique child.
The only child?
Yes, he was the only child. And he had cousins and other family that were not religious. We actually didn't have any contact with them.
But do you know if they survived?
A part of them, yes. One of them I remember, I don't remember the name of the lady. I remember the sons. One was Sylvain Ringer, and he was very much connected afterwards in also rebuilding the Bnei Akiva. And he went in a lot of ways, and we were more in the Aguda, and in this time, unfortunately, there was not very much connection between the different parts. So we really saw them very rarely.
And Rachel, when you went to school, when you were growing up, I'm sure a lot of your friends didn't have their whole families intact. Most of them were single, or most of them didn't have families. Your family was quite unique.
Yes. It was really terrible, so I can tell you a story that was also very traumatic. Also, we were small, when we had already classes that were more or less, so every day came new children, and there were also children that were in the orphanage, and we had Jewish teachers who were not great because they were not trained as teachers, but they came out from Auschwitz, to learn Chumash, yes, but they were, except 2 or 3 exceptions, not good teachers. And the not Jewish teachers had absolutely no idea what kind of children were before that. So we were reading in the reading books, and one of the first readings were about mothers. So we had to read that because that's the first reading, and at the end of the lesson 5, 6 or 7 children were on the floor crying and sobbing. So I went to the teacher, when I was 10, I don't know what, or even not. I said, could we not skip that? She says, no, it's written in the book. So this was the psychological knowledge of the people in this time. She wouldn't have the courage to skip that if she sees that people that lost their parents, that maybe saw their parents even die. We had no idea what these children passed. The only one who really did a very, very good job was the director, the Menahel of the orphanage, Mr. Tiefenbrunner. And he made, without ever being a psychologist, he made a fantastic work, but he was one alone. Most of people did not. And all these children didn't tell about their experiences. And they wanted to become like everybody. They didn't want to be different. And what was also absurd, in the beginning the orphanage was in the same building as our school, but then school expanded and they had another. Now comes some rich donator, an idiot I would say, and he gave 200 or 300 meters of material, blue with little, and all the children of the orphanage had the same, how do you say, like
uniform.
A uniform. So ridiculous, absolute ridiculous. You already put the stamp on them that they were category 2. But people didn't understand. There were very little people, as here in Israel, until Amcha came. What did the people suffer here? And that was somehow also in Antwerp. I remember there was a girl who came out from Auschwitz and suffered the most horrible things, and she got engaged, and she told the things to her Chatan. He broke up. Couldn't handle it. So it was really not, there were very many nice marriages, like Shimon Pappenheim married a survivor, a lady who also came when she was 17 or 18 in concentration camp. And there was a girl in our house, what was her name? Malvin. I forgot her family name by the moment. And so to say, my mother married her off with a very, very, very nice man, a Mr. Goodfreund. And thanks God, they built up a wonderful family. And my mother was involved in all that. Also, one thing I want to say, now all these people, they had very quickly babies. Now, no of them ever held a baby in their hand. So there was a telephone, and after the Brit Milah, everybody was panicked. Frau Ringer, what shall I do? It's bleeding. And she was running from one house to the other taking the bandage of all the Brit Milah and telling the people, don't be afraid, that's fine, and this is normal, and so on. What can I do with the child, what not? She was the mother of all the young couples in Antwerp. She, I can say, I cannot imagine, and also you speak today, even everybody will tell you, Mrs. Strenger, there was not another with her. It's not simple to be the daughter of such a lady, because you didn't come to her heels. And okay, everybody tries to do something else. I'm doing what I'm doing now. God sent this to me. Seems to me that I have to do that. My sister, Baruch Hashem, made a family that's really a tribe, and a lovely family, all B'nai Torah, and all very, very. My children, Baruch Hashem, unfortunately I lost my eldest son, Carlo. He passed away a few years ago. He was very sick. He didn't have children, but my two other children are psychologists. My son is a clinical psychologist, and my daughter is psychotherapist. Very good. She also do other things. So we all have taken something that has to do about healing people, because we feel that that's what we have to do.
It's amazing.
So I'm a teacher, and yeah. I'm so grateful that I am in Yerushalayim. I have been 46 years in Basel, and I tried to do there for the community what I could. But I really feel that I got la menucha v'la nachala here. And what the message I want to say is, if not this incredible emunah of my mother, and not renouncing on doing a mitzvah or davening, renouncing on nothing, that's what helped us. I grew up with a Jewish identity as if I have been in a Haredi school my whole life. And that's what I have to say to the people now. The only way, Bezrat Hashem, that we also will pass these so terrible times now, and with our soldiers that are the tzaddikim that we cannot even imagine, is really passing the Jewish message to all of our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Well, Rachel, I just want to thank you, and it is such a beautiful message and such an important message. If I can just thank you so much. So Rachel, I'm just so grateful to you.
Thank you that you came.
There are no words. Just to hear the story, not only what your mother did and how, you say you haven't reached the heels of your mother.
No, really
your
not.
family and what you have done, and your sister and your brother, it's incredible.
Everybody does something else, and everybody got a message or get a tough kid from God, and we try to do it.
Well, just now, I am so grateful. There are no words
Thank
to
you.
thank you enough.
Thank you.
And you should
and
just have
and you
muzzle
should
and
continue, because also all the material, what you brought me here, I'll keep it for the 9 days for Tisha. I think I'm allowed to read this on Tisha B'Av.
Rachel, really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just Admei Stream, and continue doing the most amazing
and you
thing
also,
that you do.
and you
And I
also,
so
and thank
appreciate
you
it.
for all your videos that you sent me.
I'm
always.
so grateful to you.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. And be matzliach in what you do, because it's very, very important.
Rachel, I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you.
So this is a picture of your dear mother.
Yes. Okay, and my father. Okay.
And how many years were they married, your parents?
Oh, what a question. Let me see. More than 50 years, yes.
And they were happily married.
Yes, oh, sure. It was a very special marriage because they had a very intellectual connection. And the last years were very difficult because my mother was very, very sick. You know, she paid the price of everything. You know, you don't have kochot without limits. And at the end of her life, she had very, very difficult life. She was very sick. And at the end, my father passed away before her. So...
but even during the war, your mother was sick with her kidney.
Yes.
And look what she achieved and what she did.
It's unbelievable.
It's remarkable.
It's absolutely remarkable, yes.
Rachel,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
And